Okay, as always, we are fresh off the rip on a review. Um, Persona. My fiance picked it out in a bookshelf Barnes Noble because that's the name of one of her favorite franchises, video game series. Speaking of which, I just got that set up for her on my old PSP. Does it have anything to do with the video game? No. Does it really have anything to do with the Persona? No. They mentioned it in the beginning of this kind of archetype, but let's get into it. So, spoiler free, what does this book contain? It contains two different narratives that kind of collide at the end. It contains mystery, intrigue, body horror. Not a lot of horror until the end. I mean, there's a little bit of it's a lot of it's like kind of sad shit in my opinion. As far as like on my scareometer of a 10, I'm terrified, couldn't finish it. One of the scariest things I've ever in my life or experienced. To lower it, and now keep in mind, I am kind of a pussy. I get scared pretty easy, including books. So this is, I think, a pretty. It's not like me giving it a bad score, but then I don't get scared. I get scared very easily. I'd say it's a 5. I don't know if I'm still getting scared that often. However, as a book with writing, with themes, with how real some of the characters felt, I would easily give it. I give it a 7.5. I don't think I'd ever. So let me just explain. The writing's good. I like the characters. I like some of the words used. I like some of the horror. It was enjoyable. I was pretty interested for the most part. Maybe let's go flat 7. 7 to me is good. It's a good book. There's 7 is the epitome of like good. It's good. It's always hard to feel like I get a lot of 7s and 8s. Again, like for me, when I say a 5, it's not like a failing or an F. It's literally like 5 out of 10. Um, I think this is above average. It's a good book, but there are quite a few flaws I'll get into. 7 out of 10 is my score. Spoiler free. I'll go more to the book now. And I obviously, when I do the spoilers, I don't try to like just tell you every little detail. I just try to kind of talk about the book in general as if you've read it. So I guess I'm gonna do a review, and then after the review, I do an analysis. I'll start doing that. I don't know. My channel sucks. No one watches it. I don't really care. So, first issues. There's 2 typos in the entire book that I noticed right at the gate, which is just always kind of sad. Doesn't really seem like any efforts put into it. I can't remember. One is just they type, put a period and then no space the next sentence, and the other one is earlier in the book. Yep, I actually found it. Right up here, it says "I tried" as one word. That's not supposed to be there. Now, that sounds like, why the fuck do you care? I mean, you just care long term. I hope the editor sees these, and if they do another printing, they fix that stuff up. Nothing that big crazy. Doesn't take points. If it happens a lot, it does, but it does always kind of kill the mood if you're trying to read and you stumble over a word that you can't understand, and you pause. Oh, it's not supposed to be like that. Um, as far as the actual book, it's like short and like skinny this way, and then tall. I like that. I like the cover art, and everything's pretty good. Now, all out of the way, let's go to the analysis. So, some of the characters had really good monologues, dialogues. A lot of stuff was really good. Some of the characters seemed very real. However, randomly, just feel like they just threw information at us that didn't really have any sense, or they almost just created stuff with no payoff. For example, it felt like there was a certain scene where one of the main characters is like, there's also has this whole revelation that they kind of hinted at, but it wasn't like worked out, and they just like completely confessed. That didn't really make any sense. Um, so some of the build-ups and the payoffs didn't really feel earned. Now on the actual books, I kind of been alluding it. It is about a trans woman. As the back says, she has porn she doesn't remember making. She finds it herself. Long story short, the book's split into 4 segments. They're all pretty similar-ish in length. Like the first one's 70, next one's 100, next one's 70, and the last one's like 5 pages, like basically an epilogue. Um, First one is told from one girl's narrative. Second one told from another girl's narrative. They're separate people. They look identical, and it's confusing. So it's big spoiler for the porn there. It's not actually her. It's just this other girl. Well, anyways, they seem like almost like the same person though. Like not like they're just like randomly twins. Like they have very similar names, very similar personas. They look identical. They live very similar lives, like almost alternate stuff. And there's a really cool thing to do that with like one of them has a boyfriend that dumps and like goes to the other one. It's a whole like sort of drama thing. But anyways, they give you some hints into the character's background. The first chapter ends with kind of she does this online sketchy thing. Not sketchy, but she fills these forms. She lives in complete filth. A lot of self harm, a lot of suicidal shit going on. She watches porn, sees has her in it. She tweaks out even more. Like to take which is a conscious, she get raped. And then it ends by her finding someone across the street, identical across the apartment complex that looks just like her. Then mutates into a giant monster, then comes and kills her, and the chapter ends basically, or kills her. Some weird dream sequence plays. There's another character who, instead of Amy, it's Amy. I can't even honestly keep the names apart. She's a little bit different, a little more positive traits, but she's like a cam girl, has her own set of issues, own set of impulsiveness. Whole thing goes on. And basically, she ends up struggling a little bit more. She's a camera. She goes to her friend's art show. She kind of is a shitty friend. low self-esteem, shitty hookups, a little bit cleaner apartment, and then she meets the other character because she follows this podcast where it saw the other character in this other sequence. I'm not going to fully spoil and explain. They am kind of converging in the last chapters. I'm working together. Um, and then this is where the book kind of redeems itself, kind of doesn't. So then the ending sequence is basically one girl had the job, I said, filling out these forms. Was for Chariot Company, which is like the suspicious-ish company, but who cares? Other girl was a tech support. They both work at the same company. Something's going on. They find this company, find a janitor working, and kind of explore. Well, as they explore, they go down this elevator. I think like it said I want to say 20-minute long elevator ride. So you can only imagine how far down that is. Then there's like this like Lovecraftian horror machine of like writhing human body parts. There's a kind of unearned sequence that just kind of tells everything from this like doctor that like explains that they're like kind of clone offering fodder humans. Their life's fake. And then it cuts and it shows the one girl dying, and then the one, or we're led to believe, and then the other girl kind of goes back to a pseudo normal life with what seems like a new boyfriend or something, and then kind of remembers the other girl. So all in all, it just seems incomplete. There were some really good ideas there, but they didn't really follow through. It kind of goes like my biggest issue is what makes a horror work great is build up. This doesn't have build up. There's some slight stuff going on. There's that kind of spider scene after the first 70 pages and switches narratives. Nothing scary. Nothing is scary. Nothing is even eerie. Nothing even gets my skin crawling. Nothing. And then finally to get to this like cherry place, stuff seems off. But again, nobody seems scary. More seem background vibes, which for me is just not at all scary. Like I just don't like. I mean, it's cool, just not scary. So I guess I'm gonna call this a horror book. And like so, people say this year's great work of literary horror. I guess I don't know what else to come with this year. I was pretty underwhelmed from the horror aspect. I think it was cool. I think a lot of stuff at the end, however, was really unearned. Oh god, I actually might change it rating to a 6 instead of a 7. I don't know. I mean, it is a book I could recommend with some caveats. It's not a bad book. I don't know anything about the author. It might be one of her first books, or I think it's a girl. It says Aoife. Was it Josie? Jesus Christ. I think they do, from my experiences having friends and personal stuff myself, that are I have some friends that are trans, and personally myself, I have some experience. Right, I had a while where I was going through some, we'll just say some stuff, and I had to kind of look deep in that psyche. I do think they represented the narrative of a trans person extremely well. I think there's just a lot of weird issues, and I think the route they took to finish the book, like this kind of Lovecraftian, was just again cheap and unearned. Like I think they should have done. There was already a lot of cool material there with the girl and her struggles, and I think they could have done something a lot cooler or a lot like more realistic with trauma or just other creepy shit. It's a creepy character, and so they just do something where at no point in time do you feel scared. They make this one eerie thing that's kind of a fun thing to learn about, fun thing to describe. The idea is kind of cool, but the rest of it, the ending is maybe awkward. Is there's some graphic sex scenes. The two twins that are like basically again towards the end, there's like creations and banging each other, so like banging themselves. But it's weird. The more I think about it, the more I'm saying this book, because I just finished it a couple hours ago. Normally I don't write reviews as fresh because I'm lazy. This book is not. It is still good. I still stand by that. It's still a fun read. I just feel like the authors kind of did the classic random bullshit, go. And I feel, when they had that spider scene, because the scene that happens, kind of, not to give full spoilers, like this guy morphs, this guy's banging what she thinks is her, but across the street. And it's trippy. And they morph this weird spider thing and chase her. That is like the first moment, like, whoa, this is fucking scary. Then, play off on that. Like, is the other girl see her as a weird monster thing, or, tweaking? Or don't even play on that. Play on that. Like, Chariot took your identity. There's a scene where Chariot asked her for a scan. They scan her with their camera covered. Do some sort of scene where maybe it's something like this, like Lovecraftian, like that. Like, they just taking your identity or clothes. There's so many, like, I think, not, and now let me be clear. What they did was just super kind of cool and unique. Like, okay, I didn't really see how it was coming. But it's not scary. Again, it just doesn't feel earned. And I think they could have done so many other cool things. So what I mean by that is that's like saying, I tell you a narrative. It's me adventuring. I'm a knight. It's a traditional fantasy world. Completely normal narrative. And then, like, they just switch, like, at the end, like, oh, actually, this is all this, this, and this. And it just doesn't feel earned or sensical, which I guess, again, can technically happen. Maybe there is these big wool over eyes situations in real life, and that's what it's trying to say. I don't know. But to me, it just really felt like there wasn't the build up, there wasn't the stuff. So if they wanted to go the route they went, they should have had more introduction to creepy chariot characters, more emphasis on the chariot. Now, obviously, immediately chariot picks your interest. Something I hate to use the word, but sus or is weird with that situation, and they just kind of drop it and just go on this party life and this party arc, and she forgets about it. And again, it doesn't have the classic moments because at any point in time, it feels like she's going to walk away from the chariot thing. Again, it does seem a little creepy at the end, like, where it's like, okay, like, what's real, what's her memories, and there's this little monologue by one of the scientist guys, but I'm led to believe. But all in all, for a book that took me probably 4 or 5 hours to read, I slow read it. No, not 4. I think maybe 3 or 4 hours to read. For all that considered, I was probably uncomfortable even for like uncomfortable maybe for 5 minutes because sex scenes are really graphic and almost rapey. So more uncomfortable, and then maybe slightly uncomfortable, scared like the horror kind you like for about 5 scenes. And so again, I just last thing I want to wrap up is people last time say, especially with horror movies, it doesn't need to have sexual assault to be scary. A lot of times it's almost like just women getting sexually abused and like stuff for an hour and a half straight. I've seen a lot of, like, again, I'll be honest, I do go on TikTok, I've seen a lot of TikToks except that slandering horror, and it's not slander in my opinion. I do think it's true. You don't need to see girls or anyone just getting sexually assaulted or raped, because it almost seems like some sort of depraved fantasy. And I'm all for someone who likes dark stuff, but again, it's the idea. You can show this stuff, and this shit is awesome. If you show this stuff and try to glorify it and say this is normal, this is good, this is a fantasy, that's what the issue is, right? And so I'm not claiming the author's doing this at all. I'm just claiming a normal works in the movies. So what I'm trying to get back with here is it comes off as cheap, and it reminds me a lot of like sometimes what the boys do in some of their earlier comics, which again I guess is their point and is their idea. They're going for that edge factor. But one I always kind of line up for, which the community and the show you never believe that, but a couple years ago, I want to say sophomore in high school, so 5 years ago, I read the Invincible comics for the first time front to back in like a day. I had all the compendiums, like 48 hours. There's like this rape scene later. I guess spoiler alert. I thought it was handled really well. It wasn't put there to shock you, make you gross. It was just put there to almost show the ramifications, to show that even strong. But I think there was actual thematic purpose. A lot of times you run into, especially in horror movies, but other stuff, is it just for edge factor? Like, oh, they got murdered and raped, but it doesn't have anything to backstory. Which again, I'm not saying suffering always leads to growth or is important. Maybe it's just to show the depravity of humankind. But at a certain point, it's not essential to the narrative. And again, you can maybe pull away off or get away with it, but you want to be careful. And so again, I'm all for write what you want to write or how you want to write. So for example, again, like if you do put those things in and say, oh, there's no real narrative importance because again, like the world is set depraved. Cool. My big issue with this one, and in this novel here, there's some rapey-esque scenes. They should focus on that. They should focus on the depravity of sex work, how these women are taken advantage of, how a lot of people were very mean to her trans identity, calling her just all sorts of slurs, and there was so much more real world stuff. It didn't have to have, and like maybe if you want to do more of a horror vibe, you could go, Ryu Murakami, miso soup type shit, have some sort of whatever on the red light district, kind of killer thing going on. But even if you know that, just showing the depravity of the red light district, make it more gross and shocking and less of an actual horror, I would enjoy this book more. I think it's the biggest vibe I got. Is I feel like in the last 20 pages, 30 pages, just random bullshit. And again, it's a cool idea, but they don't explore the ramifications. It doesn't lead me to be really scared, and it isn't really anything profound. I think the characters have good dialogue, good monologues. I think it is a good book. Again, I would give it a 6. My new score is 6. I don't know. And again, I don't know anything about this author. So if this is their first work, I commend them. I mean, everyone needs to start writing someplace. I just don't think this is a fully fleshed out idea. I don't think authors ever do this, but I would just love if the author was like, hey, let me look back at this. Let me look back into this. I'll be tweaking. I'm not saying tweak what I want. I just think it didn't feel very cohesive. And again, maybe she's going to go online or whatever. Maybe I'm just a pleb, right? I don't understand anything. Maybe as part of it was the narrative fragmentation. I don't know. But I felt a little bit like the ending was a decent ending, but almost not for this book. There just wasn't tension. Every payoff, the couple payoffs that were good, like the rewards didn't feel earned, and then everything else just felt like no tension, leading to nothing. Actually, it was just an interesting narrative, but I never felt myself saying like what. And every time things got intense, they just fizzled. I don't know what's going on, but I really just want to take this. There's a scene where basically this guy takes advantage of her. This is the I think Amy girl, I want to say. It's like the Cam one or whatever, the more confident one. It goes like she does a whole party, whatever. And in order to kind of entice this guy, she's doing it just to more get information from him. Like, oh, I'll let you do stuff to me later, or we can like film it or something, whatever. He asked her, "Are you still up for it?" She's kind of like, eh. She goes, "Okay." without any consent, without any asking. She's in, and he gets his friend. They both bang her. And this is the original video you see earlier. Well, I didn't like that at all. Um, I think. Yeah, I'm not gonna be worried about spoilers at all because I'm just gonna start doing reviews about review, and then I'll analyze it, and then maybe do a more in-depth review. But I'm sorry, I'm so scatterbrained. I think that's what just okay. Let's explore that. Let's explore maybe she gets trafficked or something like really. That's like for me. I've always been a soft spot for real life, and so what I mean by that is not like someone real getting hurt per se. Ooh. I've always found the serial killer movies one of the scariest. Why? Because they exist. Supernatural horror can be good. I'm actually not a big fan of it as far as scary. It's cool. I like it. It's almost like fantasy to me, but that's it. Fantasy, not scary. It takes away. It's really throwing last minute supernatural elements. No, not saying it completely nulls and voids all fear. Sometimes it can enhance it. That is not my personal tool. Especially when it seems there's like nothing with supernatural except for one kind of scene at the end. I think exploring a real world thing would have been a lot more scary. Now, obviously, that's my opinion. I think, like I said, real life stuff that can happen is always scary. But even taking this, for example, at face value, I think exploring the ramifications of the red light district of other things would have been extremely interesting. Would have been extremely, maybe even like uncomfortable. And I honestly just a parallel to Miso Soup, which I don't think I've even done a review on because I read it a while ago. What made that so scary was tension. There was constant tension. The narrator was, I just loved it. I tore that shit up in a night. Right? This took me like 2-3 days to finish this reading little sessions. I think that's my biggest thing. Is this not just slander? I'm pretty sure this is a new author because I've just never heard of them. But maybe I'm just they're French and it's niche. And I don't know. Aoife. I read the name. I'm not trying to be rude. I only can pronounce names like Bob and John. I guess because I'm ignorant. Emily, basic white names. I bottom line, it was an enjoyable read. A lot of the stuff didn't add up, and it's really hard because I feel like this author had a lot of strengths, but then also a decent bit of weaknesses with cohesive and other stuff. So I feel like this author had more weaknesses than a lot of people I see, but also they had quite a few strengths. The book was enjoyable, and there's parts where I'm feeling like, damn, that's cool, or damn, I feel seen that little paragraph there, and then almost seemed to add a ton of unnecessary stuff and filler. I will say though, at least one thing I always hate about books is books that do stuff or like that or aren't cohesive or make you feel like whatever, and like 600 pages. This book was short and concise. I always can appreciate that. I think one of my biggest issues is I'm almost more bitter if I read a longer book and it's not good. And typically longer books always have the best payoff, right? So you get like 700 plus pages, 800 plus pages, and your book sucks. Like, oh damn, I'm mad. So I will give this one absolute credit. I read it. It was good. I mean, literally, I read like I don't know what it was. This book's worth, or the entire book of worth of an introduction, or like some book. I can't remember what it was called. It was like I think I gotta finish it. Gardens of the Moon, and literally I'm like a fifth through the book, but that's just crazy to me to start to think about that. But yeah, long story short, it's a good book. I'm gonna wrap this up. So yeah, forever. It's good. I enjoyed it. I just think it has heavy flaws. I would recommend it for a read to act to actually feel scared. I wouldn't recommend it.